Have you ever wondered why we call the creatures of the deep sea monsters, yet we never say land monsters? There's actually a very good reason for that. Because it is the ocean, not the land, that has always been home to the most terrifying, mysterious, and unbelievable predators ever to exist on Earth. Since the dawn of time, the depths of the sea have been filled with beings far more fearsome than anything that ever walked the ground. Life has existed for more than 4 billion years, constantly changing and evolving. So it's only natural that entire deadly oceans, along with their horrifying inhabitants, have come and gone throughout Earth's history. But among them all, there was one particular sea that truly deserved the title of the most dangerous place on the planet. And what's even stranger is that this ancient sea once covered a place no one would ever expect. As if destiny itself had planned it, this deadly stretch of water, once known as a trap of death, would one day give way to a land considered one of the most dangerous regions on Earth. And this was no coincidence, because both the deadliest sea and the deadliest land were born from the same cataclysmic event, a geological collision that reshaped the entire world forever. Around 100 million years ago, from space, North America looked almost like it does today, but on the ground, it was unrecognizable. Two tectonic plates, the Farallon and the North American plate, collided violently, triggering massive volcanic eruptions and raising the first young mountain ranges. Smoke, ash, and molten rock filled the skies, but the real story lay below, a vast depression stretching across the continent like a giant bowl waiting to be filled with water. Then nature began to pour the ocean in. From the north, the ancient Arctic Ocean spilled southward. From the south, the Gulf of Mexico rose to meet it. The two bodies of water converged, splitting North America in half from Alaska to Texas, forming the Western Interior Seaway, a shallow inland sea over 3,200 kilometers long, nearly 1,000 kilometers wide, and less than 800 meters deep. Shallow as it was, that very trait made it a hell's aquarium. Sunlight reached the seafloor, warming the waters, fueling blooms of algae and plankton. And when the soup of life grew rich enough, monsters inevitably came to feast. At the very top of this food chain ruled the mosasaurs, distant relatives of snakes and lizards, but stretched to 50 feet, around 15 meters in length and weighing several tons. With massive skulls, scalpel-sharp teeth, and sleek, muscular bodies that moved like living submarines, they were the true phantoms of the ancient sea. The most famous of them, Mosasaurus hoffmanni, became a cinematic icon in Jurassic World. And while the movie exaggerated some things, the real creature was every bit as horrifying. Even the smaller species, such as Tyrannosaurus, Clydastes, and Platecarpus, were terrifying aquatic nightmares in their own right. Fascinatingly, recent studies suggest these reptiles may have hunted in coordinated packs, much like modern great white sharks. But don't think the mosasaurs had the ocean all to themselves. The ancient shark Cretoxyrhina, often called the great white of the Cretaceous, prowled these same waters, reaching lengths of 16 feet, about 5 meters. Some fossil specimens even indicate individuals larger than today's biggest great whites. And from the tooth marks found on mosasaur bones, it seems that sometimes the shark was the hunter, not the prey. A clash between these two titans must have looked like National Geographic filmed by Michael Bay. Nature's raw power turned cinematic chaos. If that still doesn't sound terrifying enough, let's add a few supporting monsters to the cast. Massive predatory fish like Xiphectinus, capable of swallowing prey the size of a grown human whole. Ancient cephalopods, relatives of modern squids and octopuses, such as Parapuzosia, which could weigh over 1.5 tons, nearly 3 times heavier than today's giant squid. Yes, this was the largest invertebrate species ever known. Imagine a gigantic, coiled shell creature gliding through the water like a flying saucer, with tentacles longer than a human body. If H.P. Lovecraft had lived back then, he wouldn't have needed to invent a single monster. They were already there. But that world wasn't made up of horrors alone. It also hosted the gentle Ankylosaurus, a sea turtle weighing around 3 tons and roughly the size of a modern sedan, a peaceful giant that fed mostly on jellyfish. There were the elegant, long-necked plesiosaurs, gliding through the water like colossal swans. And above it all, ruling the skies, soared Pteranodon, the iconic flying reptile of the Cretaceous, with a wingspan reaching 20 feet, over 6 meters. Paleontologists have uncovered more than 200 specimens, making it the most commonly found flying species of its time. Picture hundreds of giant bat-like creatures swooping over the waves, their silhouettes slicing through the air as they dive for fish, a sight both awe-inspiring and utterly terrifying. On land, the feast of monsters was far from over. Along the shores of the Western Interior Seaway lived Deinosuchus, the so-called dinosaur crocodile. It weighed over 8 tons, stretched more than 35 feet, and possessed a bite powerful enough to crush a dinosaur's bones. Its armor was as thick as steel, and its tail could strike like a whip. It was the living tank of the Cretaceous. But what made it truly terrifying wasn't just its strength. It was its ambush. Deinosuchus didn't confine itself to the sea. It lurked silently in the rivers and estuaries, which meant one thing: you never knew when it might rise from the water to drag you under. From the seafloor to the skies, this world was an eruption of evolution. The splitting of the continent had created 2 massive islands, Laramidia and Appalachia, where land-dwelling dinosaurs evolved just as wildly as their oceanic counterparts. While the watery hell beneath boiled with life and death, the land above was ruled by giants: Tyrannosaurus, Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, all thriving in their golden age. It's a strange irony. The sea itself had ignited an explosion of life on land, proof that death and life have always danced together in the endless rhythm of evolution. Then, one day, the tectonic plates shifted again. The sea began to retreat, leaving behind vast beds of sediment that would one day harden into fossil-rich rock across what is now Kansas, Wyoming, and Colorado. Today, when you drive across the wide-open fields of the Great Plains, it's hard to imagine that beneath your tires once lay the floor of an ocean filled with monsters. Every grain of sand here was once a drop from hell's aquarium, where life and death intertwined in a dance that lasted millions of years. And perhaps that's why, even now, we speak only of sea monsters, and never of land monsters. While the underwater hell, the Western Interior Seaway, boiled with monsters, a completely different story of evolution was being written on the 2 new strips of land it created: Laramidia in the west and Appalachia in the east. These 2 great islands didn't just split the continent, they divided the very future of life itself. Laramidia became a paradise for giants, colossal sauropods as tall as buildings, Triceratops clashing like freight trucks, Ankylosaurids armored like tanks, and the mighty Tyrannosaurids stalking through fern-filled forests, with heads the size of refrigerators and jaws capable of crushing steel. Appalachia, however, was anything but peaceful. It lacked the massive tyrannosaurs of the West, but in their place arose smaller, faster predators, agile killers like Deinosuchus, with long arms, sharp claws, and lightning speed. Across its floodplains roamed nodosaurids and hadrosaurids, while Deinosuchus, the dinosaur crocodile, continued its reign of terror both in water and on land. 2 islands, 2 ecosystems, 2 evolutionary explosions happening in parallel, each shaped by isolation, chaos, and survival. And as the sea finally began to retreat, its disappearance set the stage for the rise of the ultimate predator, Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of hunters. Around 70 million years ago, sea levels began to fall as the continental plates rose, lifting the land higher and higher. The ocean's retreat was slow, but devastating. Over the span of millions of years, nearly 80% of the great creatures from the Golden Age vanished. Titans that once ruled the waters Ichthyornis, Archelon, Mosasaurus, disappeared from the fossil record, erased by time. Yet, as nature always dictates, when one lineage falls, another rises. As the waters withdrew, the newly exposed land, rich with mineral-laden sediments, transformed into vast, fertile plains. And upon this reborn landscape, a new world emerged: Hell Creek. Today, Hell Creek stretches across Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota, all regions once swallowed by the Western Interior Seaway. When the sea finally vanished, it left behind a tangled network of swamps, rivers, and dense forests, a colossal buffet of life. But hidden within that lush paradise was an unmatched terror: Tyrannosaurus rex, the most perfect land predator ever to walk the earth. If Hell's Aquarium was the inferno beneath the waves, then Hell Creek was its reflection on land, the hell above the surface. Tyrannosaurus rex was the result of millions of years of brutal natural selection. It stood 12 feet tall, stretched 40 feet long, and weighed up to 12.5 tons, about as much as a fully loaded cargo truck. Its enormous skull housed jaw muscles capable of generating a bite force exceeding 60,000 newtons, 3 times stronger than that of the most powerful modern crocodile. If other predators' teeth were daggers, then Rex's were deadly serrated bananas, built not just to tear flesh, but to crush bone into powder, a fact confirmed by fossilized droppings filled with pulverized bone fragments as fine as sand. And as for those famously short arms, don't laugh. Each could lift half a ton, strong enough to pin down a thrashing Triceratops until it stopped moving. But what made Rex truly terrifying wasn't just its strength, it was its intelligence. It had binocular vision, an exceptional sense of smell, and likely hunted in coordinated groups. Picture this: not one, but 3 or 4 Rexes charging together the moment the scent of blood drifted through the air. If you were standing in Hell Creek when that happened, your chance of survival was effectively 0. The only consolation? Rex wasn't particularly fast. So if you were a velociraptor, you might have bought yourself a few extra minutes. Hell Creek was the final stage of the dinosaur era, and Rex was its undisputed star. Studies suggest that 85% of all known T-Rex fossils come from this region, earning it the title of the monster capital of the Cretaceous. But Rex didn't just hunt other species, it also fought its own kind. Fossil evidence shows bite marks on the bones of other T-Rexes, suggesting violent battles and even cannibalism. Yes, sometimes the king feasted on his own court. If dinosaurs had a code of conduct, Tyrannosaurus rex would have shredded it long ago. And thank goodness it couldn't swim. Otherwise, Hell's Aquarium and Hell Creek might have merged into one single nightmare package. 2-in-1 tour, complete Hell experience. Hell Creek wasn't just the kingdom of T-Rex. Beneath the shadow of that mighty ruler thrived a whole world of smaller but equally deadly assassins. One of them was Nanotyrannus, weighing nearly 5 tons, quick, vicious, and specialized in hunting prey, roughly human-sized. Whether it was a juvenile T-Rex or a separate species remains debated, but that changes nothing about its nature. It was, without question, a born killer. And just when you think that's enough, remember, Hell Creek was also raptor heaven. The Acheroraptor, a close relative of Velociraptor, stretched about 3 meters long, fast, agile, and cold-blooded. It used its crescent-shaped claws and rows of fine, serrated teeth to slice prey open, killing not with a single blow, but through slow, bleeding death. But the true nightmare was the Dakotaraptor, taller than a human, up to 6 meters long, and heavier than a North American grizzly bear. Its weapons were 20-centimeter claws, sharp as kitchen knives, capable of ripping through flesh and muscle in a single strike. And if they hunted in packs, which some evidence suggests, even the massive Edmontosaurus would have stood little chance against this Hell Creek horror. There is, perhaps, one piece of good news. Some paleontologists believe the first skeleton discovered might have been a chimera, a fossil mistakenly assembled from several different species. The bad news? Whatever those bones belonged to, it was still something real, and definitely not friendly. You might be wondering, with that many predators, how could anything survive at all? The answer: only the biggest and boldest creatures did. Because to make Hell Creek the deadliest land ecosystem in Earth's history, it needed not only monsters that hunted, but monsters that fought back. The gentle resident of Hell Creek was Triceratops, the king of all ceratopsids. Imagine an African elephant, but larger, heavier, and far more aggressive, with twin horns nearly a meter long and a skull shield as hard as steel. Some individuals weighed up to 10 tons, enough to make even T-Rex cautious. Fossils reveal cracked and punctured skulls, evidence of fierce battles between rivals. Some bones even bear T-Rex bite marks, yet Triceratops struck back hard enough to break the predator's teeth. Beside it roamed Ankylosaurus, the armored tank of the Cretaceous. Weighing around 8 tons, its body was covered in bony plates like dragon scales, ending with a massive tail club. A single swing could generate the force of hundreds of people striking at once. Just picture it. If T-Rex took one hit to the leg, it would likely limp for the rest of its life. It's no surprise that no Ankylosaurus fossil has ever been found with signs of predation. Even the king of Hell Creek knew better than to pick that fight. Just when scientists thought that this hell on Earth belonged only to the land. In 2021, paleontologists made a shocking discovery: the fossil of a massive mosasaur right in the middle of Hell Creek. The creature stretched over 11 meters long, and some estimates suggest it may have reached up to 15 meters, a full-sized sea monster buried deep in what is now dry land. But how could a marine predator end up so far inland? One theory suggests it swam in through brackish waterways that once connected to the fading Western Interior Seaway. Another proposes that the great inland sea never fully vanished, instead rising and retreating in cycles over thousands of years. Whichever is true, this find revealed something astonishing. Hell Creek was once a place where ocean and land merged, where the boundary between worlds disappeared. And just when it seemed nature had exhausted its horrors, it pressed the reset button. A colossal asteroid, over 6 miles wide, hurtled toward Earth at 40,000 miles per hour, slamming into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. Chicxulub. The impact unleashed tsunamis the height of skyscrapers, rained fire from the skies, and plunged the planet into darkness for years. Within mere weeks, Hell Creek became a vast graveyard. Every legend, Rex, Triceratops, Anzu, the Inferno Dragon, fell together in one final tragic chapter. But from those ashes, life did not vanish. It merely changed its form. The small survivors, mice, lizards, and birds, quietly began the dawn of a new era, the Paleogene period, the age of mammals. Hell Creek, once the very definition of hell itself, became the gateway to rebirth. And even today, if you stand upon the open plains of Montana and listen closely, the wind still seems to carry an echo, a distant whisper from a time when the earth was ruled not by myth, but by flesh and bone kings. When the underwater hell receded and Hell Creek rose in its place, Earth reminded us of an eternal truth. Death always paves the way for new life. From the serrated jaws of Mosasaurus to the bone-crushing bite of T-Rex, every creature that once lived here played its part in composing the final symphony before the Chicxulub asteroid ended the Cretaceous world. But that ending was only the beginning of another story. On the very soil once soaked in blood, small survivors emerged, the first mammals, and from them, our own era began. So, if you had the choice, would you dare to journey back to the depths of Hell's Aquarium or the deadly plains of Hell Creek? Like, share, and subscribe to uncover more of the hidden mysteries of our planet's ancient past.